First of all, I guess how was the trip over from New Zealand?
Yeah, it was long because I've been in London for about 6 months, so it's taken me like 6 months to get here. Yeah.
And you went kind of a different route. You went Seattle and now back south. So you've kind of gone cross country basically for us Americans.
Yeah. Well, it just worked out that I had another short film in the Tacoma Film Festival, so I flew in here to get the cheap ticket and then flew there, and then I think they're having their closing party right now. So the opening night party here better be bloody raging because they know how to put it on in Tacoma.
I think when you leave Austin, you'll see why they call it weird. It'll be fun. Hope you won't remember all of it, but we'll see. So I guess we were talking about this before. This is your first short that isn't strictly comedy based. I mean, most of yours are kind of darker comedies, but this has a very serious edge to it, and it's a lot more of maybe an emotional piece to it. I mean, it's in 6 minutes you give us serious nature with what's going on in this short.
Yeah, I just noticed that all my films relied really heavily on the comedy, and it was always the button at the end of every scene that propelled the film forward, and it just made me a little bit worried that maybe I was relying too much on that and not the actual storytelling. So yeah, with this one we stripped all that back, and as soon as it was drama, then we would just like, well, if we're not going to make them laugh, let's try and make them cry. which is kind of just like another kind of hook, I guess. So yeah, no lessons learned yet.
What's it like? I mean, this was shot in a weekend, basically, or
a day and a half. Yeah.
With that quick of a shoot, I mean, and we were just talking about how the camera came at you last minute. I mean, how kind of crazy was that day and a half?
Yeah, it was pretty full on, but we would have given ourselves longer if we'd thought we really needed it. That sort of punk rock attitude we have to filmmaking is only because we know that we don't need all those safety nets to make something more extravagant. You know, there's no special effects, and there's not lots of actors, and the camera moves are all very Spartan. So yeah, we knew that we could pull it off. Even if we hadn't got that camera, we had such a controlled lighting situation that we knew that we could still make a really good film. So it's not completely flippant and like as crazy as it sounds, and I just feel that it's a strength that a lot of people haven't tapped into, that you can actually pull some really great stuff off without very much if you prepare it properly. Yeah.
How is it that you direct? I mean, because you star in your film, and on that side of the camera, is it tough to flip between what you're doing as an actor compared to what you need to do as a director?
Well, so Pete Camilleri is my co-director with us, and he's a really visual filmmaker, and I think that's why this film has the best of both worlds, because like I said, my stuff is usually very Spartan, whereas he's got a lot more flair to his work, but then in this situation it also meant that I could completely commit to being in the moment and not worry about anything practical, because if he wasn't there, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it. We did a follow-up film like 2 or 3 months after this one, just before I moved to London, and that one I wrote and directed, and I acted in that one as well, and I didn't have Pete there, and for sure it's not something that I can do easily, but it's just being aware of it and just being like, I just wasn't present there mentally, so we're going to need another take. There was one take where I was reacting to another actor, and I was actually nodding like in approval of what he was doing, which is what I'd normally do if I'm directing. I'm like, oh sweet, I got it. And I was actually thinking in that way, and then I was like, oh my god, that is horrible acting, because it's not even acting. But then it's just that being able to adapt and to, you know, to realize that you're doing something like that and then address it. Yeah, so I like doing something like that is nerve-wracking and foreign territory that you have to adapt and learn from, because it just makes you better. I think it's made me a better director just because, I've worn both hats now. So yeah.
What about casting young kids and the two brothers? And were you trying to find someone maybe that looked similar to you, or were you just trying to cast, blindly?
Yeah, no, that was basically it. It was just two kids that, looked enough like us that I think that sometimes you see that and it throws you out so much because it's so clearly, the audience knows that it's not actually the same person. But every now and again you see really well cast versions of that where it's, the person's kid or a cousin or something, and then it's, you're like, wow, that's magic. And so we're trying to see if we could pull that off. So we just did a big, wide casting search amongst friends and anyone who had kids, and then some online stuff, and we found the kid that looked like me okay, because he was quite young, but then the guy who played my brother, we didn't even think about that picture, which is the reveal of the brother finally, and we hadn't even thought about that. So we'd cast the kid, but then we had to find we basically cast that person just because it's one picture, just by going through Facebook like an hour before we got the shot.
To match the kid.
Yeah. And so we're just like ripping through this computer, and the computer that I'm like trying to get into, it's my girlfriend's old laptop, and it is so slow, but it has no access to the internet, but it just had all these old holiday pictures. So the person in that picture is just like some dude she went to a music festival with like 7 years ago. And we were just going through all the pictures, and I was just like, sweet, that's the one. So what I said before about us being prepared and still making sure that it was going to be good, I might not have been completely.
So I love the whole concept behind passwords and them revealing more about yourself and about the people you know than necessarily what's in the computer. Where did that whole concept come about? Were you trying to get in your girlfriend's passwords, or I know it's a story about brothers, but where did the whole password thing come from?
It started off with just the idea of losing a friend who was going through some pretty dark stuff, and it was just thinking, he's a filmmaker as well, and so I was thinking about what would happen if I lost him, and we lost some of the work that we'd collaborated on previously, or whatever, and it felt really tragic to me. And then I'm just always aware of anything that makes me feel anything really potent like that is any kind of wound is worth exploring on screen. And so then I realized that it was just going to be one question, one security question, but then I realized with each question we could amp up the tension by him remembering more of their childhood, and that's the sore spot, because it's him resenting his brother, and so as he remembered more about his brother, that becomes the antagonistic force, because that's what he's avoiding thinking of. So good story mechanics, they become pretty apparent pretty quickly. So it pretty much wrote itself in like a day. It was just became really quick, and I think that's why so many people got on board, and we got a good crew, and we got that camera, was just because you do see so many short film projects around, but then they can be quite, like our stuff is often quite flippant, and it's not always, the script isn't always that strong. And so it was only the case of the producer reading it and being like, okay, well, this one's actually the one that we really back. So that was when she really put together a good crew and a good location. She really tried to pull it together, because you can't treat every film the same. Some of my comedies have just been definitely not worth shooting on a red. So yeah.
I'm gonna ask then, the element of it being a drug addiction issue and not like a suicide. What made you choose that realm and that choice? It doesn't seem like necessarily it was that he wanted to choose to, you know what I mean? He didn't do this on purpose to hurt someone. He just overdosed. How did that, was that always there from the start? Did you want it to be something that was more of an accident rather than?
I think he would have been a more, the brother would have been, he would have been a very different character, and the film would have had a very different tone if it had been suicide. Because while the protagonist John places the blame on his brother's shoulders for his death, it's about irresponsibility, and that sort of informs his character a lot more, because he's the responsible one and his brother's irresponsible, and his death it was him being irresponsible. Whereas if it was suicide, then you would have been a lot more sympathetic towards the brother, I think. And I don't think the protagonist immediately comes across as a sympathetic person, because his story is about moving from anger into grieving, and so it just would have been a different story. It just seemed, it was one of those things that sometimes when you just start writing and it just comes out, sort of like first idea, best idea type thing. And so I never even considered the idea of it being suicide, just because it casts a different light across the entire thing. Yeah.
Looking at, again, with the drug addiction, having the place where he did die as a part of the film. A lot of people, I think, hide when it comes to like scary situations, but that you have to deal with what happened and where it happened and getting rid of all that stuff. And you talk about that process and that maybe helping and maybe the anger part of it. He's got to clean this up.
Yeah. So there's a shot in the film that we cut, which is actually the soiled mattress, which when Pete cut it, and he just said that it's just one step too far, and it will actually push the audience out, because it's just sort of, that's grotesque, and it's not about, it's not about the brother's death. It's about how John deals with it. So yeah, we had to make it confronting, because that's his obstacle. Is can he deal with all his brother's shit? All this stuff that's he's got all the mess that's been left from his life still there, and it's just whether or not he has the fortitude to overcome that. And he abandons it halfway through to deal with his second objective, which is to get the picture. But that room needed to be really confronting to show that he can't deal with it. So what we wound up doing was focusing more on the hypodermic needles next to the bed, but still just being tasteful about it, because I think that that's the kind of stuff that film so often, it's a bit of a trope, so we just wanted to be really tasteful about it, and tasteful with, I guess, the whole thing. So there are little glimpses of light in that room as well. There's a card that says "Love, Mum and Dad," and we just thought that was a really important element to include as well, because if it looked like his life was completely it was all despair, then there's kind of a sense of like, well, nothing was lost. But when you see that card, and that's my favorite shot of the entire film, it's just this one insert shot. I think it's just after he says, I need to get a picture of my brother for his funeral, and then it's just this card, and it's just like, oh, brutal.
So kind of I know since you're traveling around, and you just said you moved to London and all that, as far as your comedy and that traveling with you, I know you might want to do comedy here in Austin, even like you're not just traveling with your film, you're getting to showcase yourself. That's got to be exciting too. I mean, you're giving us more than just a short film. You're giving, Mr. Galloway. That's got to be kind of cool to also be selling much more than just the film.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's sort of the plan now, is to present present myself as a brand, and the films to have a specific tone to them, and connect with people that like that tone of film, and just like my sense of humor, and then package it all that way. So it's sort of finding places that there is an audience for that, and then going out and having a really personable, hands-on approach to it, and combining what would be a stand-up tour with a film tour. So there's Q&A, but it's also anecdotal and stories, and it's something that I think if you build an audience, that's something that they want, is to be able to then have a meaningful connection as well, and that's what I want, because that makes more loyal fan base, and then ultimately it can keep working because of that.
So many filmmakers come into a festival not knowing about the town, not knowing about Austin, but since you are doing something where you're coming in, you're looking into the comedy scene, did you look into Austin? Did you research Austin? How much do you know about Austin?
In terms of comedy?
Anything, yeah. Barbecue, anything you want, yeah.
Flight of the Conchords did a really good bit on South by Southwest, where they came and they sort of interviewed people in Austin about New Zealand, and most people didn't even realize at that time that that's where Lord of the Rings was from, and in the end it was just them going like, it's from Lord of the Rings. It's Lord of the Rings. So that was my main interpretation of it. It was just all the New Zealand acts that get into South by, and I listen to the On Story podcast religiously, so I kind of just assumed that everyone in this entire town would just be like, painting on their porches, or like, playing jazz. Like, I just thought, art was going to be dripping from the walls, and for the most part it has.
Well, I've got to ask then, Flight of Conchords is huge. How do you look towards those guys for your comedy? Do you look towards them as, trailblazers? They continue to do bigger and bigger stuff. Now that team is directing the Thor film. You know what I mean? Like, that's, New Zealand's not just the little guy that's over by Australia now. You guys have brought us some huge talent. So Taika Waititi, the director of Flight of the Conchords, but then so his last film was Hunt for the Wilder People. When I first started making films, I was really into dramedy and combining comedy and drama and a strong sense of pathos, and his films are amazing, and definitely. So my first short film, Moo, which is about a girl who just likes drawing cows with crayons, but she's also studying fine arts, and it's just about that conflict. That was a very, very Taika style film. It was basically just flat out. I could have just said directed by Taika Waititi. It would have probably done better, actually, if that was the case. But I definitely looked up to him because of the films that he made. His first short film was nominated for an Oscar. He's just an absolute gun. So that is really inspiring. Peter Jackson's early work as well. You just seeing that he literally just went out on the weekends with ends of reels and just shot his first feature over a few years, and then that got into Cannes even. And just seeing how rough it is. It's like it's all about story, and if you can tell a good story, then the rough edges don't even matter. So I found that really inspiring, and I think that's what New Zealand is good at in particular, and this part of the world as well, with Richard Linklater, and I think maybe that's why that's part of the why this film has resonated here, was just because it's just clean storytelling without with a few rough edges, but and like y'all, we're big fans of dark comedy and kind of testing what is comedy and what's not, especially Peter's early work. Some dark material. Even like Shallow Grave was like, holy shit, this is dark as hell. So now that you moved to London, how has that changed you? Like, what, I know you're not going to become a Londoner, but you know what I mean? Like, how is that impacting you now?
It is very, very expensive to live in London, and I used to have a car and a few lights, and I thought that I'd easily just move that lifestyle to London, but that is definitely not the case. It is just financially a big. There's a lot of pressure to it, but it's just a massive life experience, and I still see, first and foremost as a writer, anytime that my entire life has a massive change, I see that as really it's sort of part of the pre-writing in a way. Like often while it's happening, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great story one day. So the move to London, I think that's probably going to be a project at some point. I haven't really done a fish out of water story, and I think that a city where the pressure is just absolutely enormous, especially on someone who's used to a life as easy and as simple as living in the Pacific. Like, New Zealand. I used to just walk everywhere. I didn't get a driver's license till I was like 27. It's just like I'll just walk. It's cheap, and I'm not doing anything. Whereas London is just it's a pressure cooker. In terms of my career, it's probably going to slow me down, slow the process down. Like I'm flying home in March to shoot a really, really indie, tiny budget feature film with the same team from Past the Second Stage. But if it wasn't for the fact that I was going home, then there'd be no way I could shoot that in London, because everyone is struggling. So everyone needs to be paid, the full industry rate really just to get by. So it doesn't actually, it's not conducive to easy indie filmmaking. Some of it goes on, but not nearly as much as Australia. The quality of life is so high there that people are just so satisfied that if you're like, hey man, can I just have you for 2 weeks just to make a feature? They're like, yeah, all right. If the script's good, I'll do it. And that's basically been my entire business model is, I can keep working because the scripts are good.
Is it weird to go home to shoot, but it's not your home anymore? I know Melbourne's not, you're from Zealand, but like...
No, Melbourne's home. My girlfriend's from Melbourne, and that's probably where we'll be based for the rest of our lives. I'd say it'll feel like going home. What'll be weird is then going back to London and maybe questioning why we're in London, because we got the 2-year visa, and she's a paramedic, so she's sponsored to be over there and stuff. But she's now kind of locked into that, and so it's like, we're doing a lot of trips around Europe, and I'm trying to figure out maybe if there's anywhere else in Europe that might be good to work in for the next year or two, just to somewhere where there's a little less pressure. Maybe just like Malta or something, just go over there with a DP and a sound guy and just bash something out.
You should check out Austin. It's not too pricey either. Well, I guess to wrap things up here, Samuel, tell us a bit about where we can find out more information about you and how we can keep track of you, and not only the comedy but your films, and just keep an eye out for you. Yeah,
cool. So most of it's on Facebook. So all the short films have Facebook pages. On social media, I'm at Sam H Galloway, and you can. I just post all the trailers and all the media for all the films kind of just goes under all that my own social media, just to keep it all together. And because tonally it's usually all very similar, it sort of means that if you like some of it, it sort of like encourages people to come back for the rest of it as well.
Is there a question you're hoping gets asked tonight at the world premiere, or doesn't get asked? I don't know. Maybe you're afraid of something.
Yeah, well, maybe just because I act in it, like maybe, do you have an agent? Do you want one? Would you like some money? Anything. As long as someone asks some questions, because it's just so awkward when you're standing up there and it's just like, people are, And also I'm representing 2 films because of the film that I boom operated on as well. So it was really funny because that paycheck for boom operating on that dude's film paid for Past the Second Stage. So he's kind of my executive producer in a way.